He told me his parents were dead. They showed up at our wedding rehearsal very much alive, and what they told me changed everything. But let me start from the beginning, because this story is way more twisted than you think. My name is Emma, and 2 years ago, I thought I'd found the perfect guy. His name was Connor. Tall, great smile, successful job in finance, always knew exactly what to say. We met at a friend's birthday party. He walked up to me, made some joke about the terrible music, and we ended up talking for 4 hours straight. By the end of the night, I had his number and this weird feeling in my stomach that this guy was going to be important. We started dating a week later. Everything moved fast, but it felt right. He'd take me to nice restaurants, surprise me with flowers, remembered little details about conversations we'd had weeks earlier. My friends loved him. My sister loved him. Even my dad, who hated every guy I ever dated, thought Connor was great. 6 months in, he told me he loved me. We were sitting on his couch, watching some movie I can't even remember, and he just turned to me and said it. No big production, no dramatic moment, just simple and honest. Or so I thought. A year into the relationship, I noticed something weird. Connor never talked about his family. And I mean never. I'd tell him stories about my crazy aunt or my brother's kids, and he'd listen and laugh, but he never shared anything back. No childhood memories, no funny stories about his parents, nothing. One night, I finally asked him directly. We were having dinner at my place, and I said, "So when do I get to meet your parents?" He got really quiet, put down his fork, looked at me with these sad eyes, and said, "Emma, I don't talk about this much, but my parents passed away. Car accident, 5 years ago." I felt terrible. "Oh my God, Connor, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up." "It's okay," he said. "You didn't know. It's just hard for me to talk about." I dropped it. Of course I did. What kind of person keeps pushing after hearing something like that? So I never asked about his family again. If he mentioned anything, it was brief, an occasional comment about missing his mom's cooking or wishing his dad could see how well he was doing at work. Small things that made the story feel real. 14 months after we started dating, Connor proposed. We were on vacation in Hawaii, walking on the beach at sunset. Total movie moment. He got down on one knee, pulled out this gorgeous ring, and asked me to marry him. I said yes, without even thinking, because I loved him, because I thought I knew him. We set the wedding date for 8 months later. That gave us time to plan everything, save some money, find the right venue. My mom was thrilled. She loved planning stuff like this. She had spreadsheets for everything. Guest lists, seating charts, menu options, all of it. About 3 months before the wedding, things started feeling off. Nothing major, just small things that didn't quite add up. Like, Connor didn't have any photos of his parents. Not one. When I asked about it, he said it was too painful to keep them around, that he donated most of their stuff after they died because seeing it made him sad. Made sense at the time. He also had no family coming to the wedding. No aunts, uncles, cousins, nobody. He said he wasn't close with his extended family, that after his parents died, everyone kind of drifted apart. Again, sad but believable. But then one day, I was helping him organize some old boxes in his closet. We were moving in together after the wedding, so he was sorting through stuff he hadn't touched in years. I found this old birthday card. It was addressed to Connor, and it was from someone named Margaret. The card said, "Happy 30th birthday to our amazing son. We're so proud of you. Love, Mom and Dad." Connor had just turned 32. This card was from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he'd told me his parents were already dead for 3 years. I stared at that card for a long time. Maybe it was old and he'd just kept it. Maybe the timeline I was remembering was wrong. But something in my gut told me to pay attention. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I started watching more carefully, listening more closely. And the more I paid attention, the more things seemed weird. He'd get phone calls sometimes that he'd never answer in front of me. He'd see the screen say, "It's work," and step into another room. When he came back, he'd seem stressed. His mail was always delivered to a P.O. box. He said it was because he had issues with package theft at his old apartment, so he kept the P.O. box even after moving. But he never let me come with him to check it. One time I asked him where his parents were buried. I was thinking maybe we could visit the graves together. He got uncomfortable and said they were cremated, and he'd scattered the ashes. When I asked where, he got annoyed and said, "Why does it matter? They're gone." That wasn't the Connor I knew. He never snapped at me like that. I started feeling crazy, like I was looking for problems that didn't exist. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So I did something I'm not proud of. I went through his stuff. Not like a full investigation or anything, just looking through drawers when he was in the shower, checking the pockets of jackets hanging in the closet, trying to find something that would either prove I was being paranoid or confirm that my gut was right. I found a phone bill, hidden in a folder with old tax documents. It was for a phone number I didn't recognize, and on that bill were dozens of calls to two numbers, the same two numbers, over and over. Calls that lasted 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes longer. I took a photo of those numbers with my phone. That night, after Connor fell asleep, I sat in the bathroom with my phone and stared at those numbers. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to just delete the photo and forget about it, trust the man I was going to marry. But the other part of me, the part that found that birthday card, needed to know the truth. I called the first number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. A woman's voice said, "You've reached Margaret Palmer. Leave a message." Palmer was Connor's last name. I hung up without leaving a message. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I called the second number. A man answered on the second ring. "Hello?" I froze. I didn't know what to say. "Hello?" he said again. "Who is this?" I hung up. I sat on that bathroom floor for probably an hour, just thinking. Margaret Palmer, the same name from the birthday card. Connor's mother was alive, and probably his father too. But why would he lie about that? Why would anyone lie about their parents being dead? I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, Connor left for work like normal, kissed me goodbye, said he loved me, told me he'd see me that evening. I smiled and said I loved him too. Then, as soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my laptop. I Googled Margaret and David Palmer. Connor had mentioned his dad's name was David once in passing. I added Connor's hometown, which I knew from conversations we had early on, a small town in Oregon called Willow Creek. I found them immediately. Facebook profiles. Margaret Palmer, age 62, living in Willow Creek, Oregon. David Palmer, age 65, same town. Their profiles were pretty private, but I could see their profile pictures, an older couple smiling. And I could see one mutual friend, Connor. They were Facebook friends with their dead son. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I calmed down, I went back to the computer. I needed to know more. I searched for Connor's name with Willow Creek. I found an old newspaper article from 6 years ago. Local man accused of fraud. I clicked on it. The article was about Connor, about how he'd scammed multiple people in Willow Creek out of money. He'd created a fake investment company, convinced people to give him their savings, and then disappeared. The article said he'd left town before charges could be filed, that police were looking for him. I kept searching, found more articles, more scams. Different towns, different stories, but always the same pattern. Connor would show up, charm people, take their money, and disappear. The most recent article was from 3 years ago, 2 years before I met him. I printed everything, every article, every piece of information I could find. Then I sat at the kitchen table and tried to figure out what to do. I could confront him, but what if he lied again? What if he convinced me I was wrong? He was good at that, good at making you believe him. I could call off the wedding, just tell everyone it wasn't working out, but that felt like running away, and part of me needed to understand why. Why he'd lied to me, why he'd built this whole fake life. Then I had another idea. I looked at Margaret Palmer's Facebook profile again, found a phone number listed in her About section. She'd made it public, probably so old friends could reach her. I called it. She answered on the third ring. Hello? Hi, I said. My voice was shaking. Is this Margaret Palmer? Yes. Who's calling? My name is Emma. I'm engaged to your son, Connor. There was a long silence. Then she said, Oh my God. So you are alive, I said. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, I'm alive. What did Connor tell you? That you and his father died in a car accident 5 years ago. She made a sound like she was crying. That boy, what has he done now? I need to know the truth, I said. Please. The wedding is in 3 months. I need to know who I'm marrying. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can you come to Willow Creek? I think we need to have this conversation in person. When? As soon as possible. I told Connor I had to go visit a friend for the weekend, a college roommate who was going through a rough time. He barely asked any questions, just said, okay, kissed me goodbye, and told me to drive safe. I drove to Willow Creek, 6 hours alone in the car, my mind racing the entire time. Margaret and David Palmer lived in a small house on a quiet street. Normal suburban neighborhood. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking. It looked peaceful. Margaret opened the door before I even knocked. She'd been watching for me. She was shorter than I expected, with gray hair and kind eyes that looked tired. Emma, she said. Yes. She hugged me, just pulled me into this tight hug like she'd known me forever. When she pulled back, she had tears in her eyes. Come in, she said. David's in the living room. David looked like an older version of Connor. Same build, same face shape. He stood up when I walked in and shook my hand. His grip was firm, but his expression was sad. We sat down. Margaret made tea that nobody drank. Tell me everything, I said. They did. They told me about Connor's childhood, how he was always charming, always knew how to get what he wanted, how he struggled in school, not because he wasn't smart, but because he didn't care, how he got into trouble as a teenager, small stuff at first, lying about where he'd been, stealing money from Margaret's purse. Then it got worse. In his 20s, Connor started scamming people. He'd befriend someone, gain their trust, and then take advantage of them. He scammed a family friend out of $10,000. He dated a woman for 6 months and stole her credit cards. He convinced his own grandmother to co-sign a loan he never paid back. Margaret was crying by this point. David just looked angry. "We tried to help him," Margaret said. "We really did. We sent him to therapy. We bailed him out when he got in trouble. We thought if we just loved him enough, he'd change." "What happened?" I asked. "6 years ago, he scammed half the town," David said. "He created this fake investment opportunity, told people he could double their money in a year. About 20 families gave him money. Some gave him everything they had. Then he disappeared," Margaret said. "We didn't hear from him for months. The police came to our house. People we'd known for years stopped talking to us. Our friends lost their retirement savings because of our son. We tracked him down eventually," David said. "Found out he was living in Seattle under a slightly different name. When we confronted him, he told us to leave him alone, said it was our fault he turned out this way, that we'd been terrible parents." "That was the last time we saw him," Margaret said. 4 years ago. He changed his phone number, blocked us on social media. We've tried to reach out, but he ignores us." "Until recently," David said. "About 6 months ago, he called. Just once. Said he was getting married. Told us not to contact him, not to try to come to the wedding. Said if we showed up, he'd have us arrested for harassment." My tea was getting cold in my hands. I felt numb. "Why are you telling me this? You don't even know me." "Because we couldn't let him do it again," Margaret said. "When you called yesterday, I looked you up online. I found your social media. You seem like a good person, Emma. You don't deserve what he's going to do to you." "What is he going to do to me?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. "He's going to take everything you have," David said bluntly. "Your money, your trust, maybe more. And then when there's nothing left to take, he'll disappear. That's what he does. That's who he is." I sat there for a long time, not saying anything. Then I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. "Do you think he ever loved me at all?" Margaret looked at me with so much sadness. "I don't know if Connor knows how to love anyone except himself. I'm sorry." I stayed in Willow Creek for 2 more hours. They showed me more proof. Documents, police reports, messages from people Connor had scammed. They gave me copies of everything. Before I left, Margaret hugged me again. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but thank you for telling me the truth." I drove home in a gaze. Part of me still couldn't believe it. This was Connor, the man who brought me coffee in bed, who laughed at my stupid jokes, who'd asked me to marry me on a beach in Hawaii. How could that person be the same person his parents had described? But deep down, I knew they were telling the truth. All the weird signs I'd ignored, all the questions he'd dodged, all the stories that didn't quite add up, it all made sense now. When I got home, Connor was waiting. He seemed happy to see me, asked about my friend, said he missed me. I played along, smiled and kissed him and acted like everything was normal. Because I had a plan. The wedding rehearsal was scheduled for the day before the ceremony. Close family and the wedding party only. About 30 people total. Everyone was going to meet at the venue, run through the ceremony, and then go to dinner. I called Margaret the next day. "I need you and David to come to the wedding rehearsal," I said. "Emma, I don't think that's a good idea," she said. "Connor told us to stay away." "I know," I said, "but I need him to face the truth, and I need everyone who cares about me to hear it too. Please, will you come?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Okay, we'll be there." I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends. I just kept planning the wedding like everything was fine. Connor didn't suspect anything. Why would he? I was good at pretending too. The rehearsal was on a Friday evening. Everyone showed up on time. My parents, my sister, my best friend who was my maid of honor, Connor's co-workers who he'd asked to be groomsmen, since he didn't have family. The wedding planner running us through the timeline. We were about 20 minutes into the rehearsal when the doors at the back of the venue opened. Margaret and David Palmer walked in. Connor saw them immediately. His face went completely white. He actually took a step back. "What are you doing here?" he said. His voice was shaky. Everyone turned to look. My mom looked confused. My dad looked concerned. "Who are these people?" my sister asked. Connor didn't answer. He was just staring at his parents. Margaret walked down the aisle toward us. David followed. They stopped about 10 feet away. "Hi, Connor," Margaret said softly. "You need to leave. Right now." "Connor, who are they?" I asked, playing dumb. He looked at me, then back at his parents, then back at me. You could see him trying to figure out how to lie his way out of this. "They're nobody," he said. "Just some people who are confused." "We're your parents," David said loudly, "and you're a liar." The room went completely silent. My mom stood up. "I'm sorry, but Connor's parents are deceased. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," Margaret said. "I'm Margaret Palmer. This is my husband, David. Connor is our son, and we are very much alive." Connor looked like he might throw up. "Emma, I can explain." "Can you?" I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd brought. All the articles, all the police reports, all the proof his parents had given me. I handed it to my dad. "Read this." My dad opened the folder, started reading. His expression changed from confused to angry in about 30 seconds. "What is this?" he asked, looking at Connor. "It's lies," he said desperately. "Emma, where did you get that? This is crazy." "I got it from your parents. Your alive parents. The ones you told me died in a car accident." My mom grabbed the folder from my dad, started reading too. My sister looked over her shoulder. "Oh my God," my sister said. Connor started backing toward the door. "Emma, please, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. You're a con artist," I said. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this. "You've scammed people in 4 different cities. You steal money and you disappear. And you were planning to do the same thing to me." "That's not true," he said, but his voice had no conviction. He knew he was caught. My dad stood up. "He's a big guy, and when he's angry, he's scary. Get out of here, right now." "Emma," Connor tried one more time. "I love you." "No, you don't," I said. "You don't love anyone. Your own mother just told me that." Margaret was crying again. David had his arm around her. Connor looked around the room, at all the faces staring at him with disgust, at his parents, at me. Then he ran, just turned and ran out of the venue like a coward. Nobody went after him. We all just stood there in this stunned silence. Finally, my best friend said, "So I guess the wedding's off?" And I started laughing, like full-on hysterical laughing. Because what else was I supposed to do? I'd just blown up my entire life in front of everyone I cared about. My mom hugged me, then my sister, then my dad. Everyone crowded around, making sure I was okay. Margaret approached slowly. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Don't be," I told her. "You saved me." We ended up canceling the dinner reservation and just ordering pizza to the venue. Me, my family, my friends, and Connor's parents. We sat around on the floor in our nice clothes, eating pizza and talking. Margaret and David told everyone the full story about Connor's history, about the scams, about how they'd spent years trying to help him and finally had to accept that he wasn't going to change. We should have warned people, David said. Every town he went to, we should have found a way to let people know. But he's our son. Even after everything, we kept hoping he'd change. You can't blame yourself, my dad said. You did what you could. We talked for hours. It was strange. This group of people who were supposed to be at a wedding rehearsal instead dealing with this massive betrayal. But it felt good to have it all out in the open. No more secrets, no more lies. Around midnight, people started heading home. Margaret and David had booked a hotel room. Before they left, Margaret hugged me again. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I honestly don't know, but I'll figure it out. You're strong, stronger than you probably realize." The next few weeks were hard, really hard. I had to tell everyone the wedding was canceled, had to return gifts, had to deal with deposits we couldn't get back, had to explain over and over why my fiancé had disappeared.
Some people were supportive. Others seemed almost disappointed that they weren't going to get their big dramatic wedding to attend. A few people even suggested I was overreacting, that everyone makes mistakes, that maybe Connor deserved a second chance. Those people didn't stay in my life very long. I moved out of the apartment Connor and I had shared, moved back in with my parents for a few months while I figured things out. I changed my phone number because Connor kept trying to call, blocked him on every social media platform. He tried to apologize, sent me this long email about how he'd made mistakes but really did love me, how he wanted to change, how we could work through this together. I deleted it without responding. About 2 months after the rehearsal disaster, I got a call from a detective. Turned out, Connor had scammed other people in the city where we'd been living. A woman had filed a police report. She'd met him on a dating app, dated him for 3 months, and he'd stolen $20,000 from her. I gave the detective everything I had, all the documents from Margaret and David, all the information I'd found. I testified when they needed me to. Connor was arrested 6 months later. Last I heard, he took a plea deal, 5 years in prison for fraud. Margaret and I stayed in touch. We'd talk on the phone every few weeks. She'd check in, make sure I was doing okay. Sometimes we'd talk about Connor, but mostly we'd just talk about life. She was like this bonus mom I never expected to have. About a year after everything happened, I started dating again. Slowly, very carefully. I had major trust issues, which was understandable. Every guy I met, I'd Google extensively. I'd ask a million questions. I'd watch for red flags. My friends joked that I'd become a detective, but honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't going to let myself be fooled again. I met Marcus at a coffee shop. Total accident. I spilled my coffee, he helped me clean it up, we started talking. He asked for my number. I almost said no, but something about him seemed genuine. Our first date, I asked him about his family. He pulled out his phone and showed me pictures. His parents, his 2 sisters, his nephew, started telling me stories about growing up. Nothing prepared or rehearsed, just natural conversation. "Can I meet them?" I asked. "Your family?" He looked surprised. "We've been on 1 date." "I know, but I've learned that family is important. and I need to know that everything you're telling me is real."
He could have been offended, could have thought I was crazy. Instead, he said, "That's fair. How about next weekend?" I met his family the next Saturday. They were loud and chaotic and wonderful. His mom hugged me within 5 minutes of meeting me. His sisters teased him mercilessly. His nephew showed me his Pokemon cards for an hour. It was real. All of it was real. Marcus and I took things slow, really slow. It took me 6 months to say I love you, another year before we moved in together. The whole time I was watching for signs, for lies, for anything that felt like Connor. But Marcus was just Marcus. Honest, kind, a little messy, terrible at remembering to take out the trash, normal human flaws, nothing hidden. We got engaged 2 years after we met. Small proposal, just the two of us at home. No beach, no big production, just him asking and me saying yes. I called Margaret that night to tell her. "I'm so happy for you," she said. "You deserve this." "Are you and David going to come to the wedding?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "Do you want us there?" "Of course I do," I said. "You're family." She started crying. "We'd love to come." Marcus and I got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Margaret and David sat with my parents. It felt right. At the reception, Margaret pulled me aside. "I heard Connor got out of prison last month," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Did he contact you?" "He tried. We didn't respond. I just wanted you to know in case he tries to reach out to you too." "He won't," I said. "I made sure of that. Legal restraining order and everything." She nodded. "Good. You've built something beautiful here, Emma. Don't let him anywhere near it." "I won't," I promised. That was 2 years ago. Marcus and I are still together, still happy. We have a dog now, and we're talking about kids. Normal life stuff. I think about Connor sometimes. Wonder if he ever changed. Wonder if prison taught him anything. But mostly, I'm just grateful. Grateful that his parents cared enough to tell me the truth. Grateful that I trusted my gut when something felt off. Grateful that I didn't marry someone who was using me. Because here's the thing about relationships. They're built on trust. And trust requires honesty. Complete, sometimes uncomfortable, always necessary honesty. If someone lies about something big, about who they are or where they come from, that's not just a mistake. That's a fundamental betrayal. Because how can you build a life with someone when the foundation is made of lies? You can't. Connor didn't lie because he was scared or traumatized. He lied because it served him. Because the truth was inconvenient. Because real Connor, the guy with the criminal past and the estranged parents, wasn't as appealing as fake Connor, the charming orphan with no baggage. But relationships aren't about being appealing. They're about being real. About showing someone all your mess and trusting that they'll stick around anyway. About letting someone meet your family, even if your family's weird. About being honest about your past, even if it's not pretty. If someone you're dating won't introduce you to their family, ask yourself why. If their stories don't add up, trust that instinct. If something feels off, investigate. You're not being paranoid, you're being smart. And if you find out someone's been lying to you, don't make excuses for them. Don't convince yourself that it's not that bad or that everyone makes mistakes. Big lies about important things are deal breakers. They should be deal breakers. Walk away. It'll hurt. It'll be embarrassing. You'll have to explain to people what happened, but you'll survive. And eventually, you'll find someone who doesn't need to lie. Someone whose real life is good enough that they don't have to invent a fake one. That's the person worth marrying, not the one with the perfect story, the one with the honest one.